Shadow and Bone, the Darklings rise. In the heart of Ravka, a land torn by war and dark magic, I, Alina Starkov, discovered a power that would change the course of history. But let me start at the beginning, in the humble village of Karamzin, where my story truly begins. I was nothing special, just an orphan girl, with a talent for map-making and a best friend named Mal. We grew up together in the shadow of the Fold, a swath of impenetrable darkness that cut our nation in two, filled with flesh-eating monsters called Volcra. The Fold was a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked in our world, and of the Grisha, the magical elite who served as our nation's second army. As children, Mal and I would lie awake at night, whispering about the Grisha and their incredible powers. The Korporaki, with their ability to stop hearts or heal wounds, the Ethiraki, who could summon wind, fire, and water, and the Materiaki, who manipulated matter itself. But we never dreamed that we could be part of that world. When we came of age, Mal and I were conscripted into the First Army, like all orphans. He became a talented tracker, while I found my place among the cartographers. Life was hard, but we had each other, and that was enough. Or so I thought. Everything changed the day our regiment was ordered to cross the Fold. As we prepared to enter the darkness, I felt a mix of terror and excitement. This was what we had trained for, what we had feared our entire lives. The skiffs that would carry us across were loaded with supplies and soldiers, all of us tense and watchful. As we entered the Fold, the world around us disappeared into an inky blackness. The only sound was the creaking of the skiffs and the nervous breathing of the soldiers. And then, we heard it, the beating of leathery wings, the screech of the Volcra. They came out of nowhere, descending on our skiff with terrifying speed. Chows erupted as soldiers fired blindly into the darkness, their shots illuminating glimpses of razor-sharp teeth and claws. I saw Mal knocked to the ground by one of the creatures, and without thinking, I threw myself between him and certain death. In that moment, as I stared into the Volcra's soulless eyes, something inside me broke free. A blinding light erupted from my palms, searing the creature and driving back the darkness. The Fold itself seemed to recoil from my touch, and for a brief, glorious moment, I saw the blue sky above us, and then, as quickly as it had come, the light faded, and I collapsed into unconsciousness. When I awoke, I was no longer on the skiff or even in the Fold. I found myself in a lavish tent, surrounded by curious and wary faces. Among them was a man unlike any I had ever seen before. He was tall and impossibly handsome, with hair as black as night and eyes that seemed to hold centuries of secrets. "Welcome back, Alina Starkov," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I am the Darkling, and you have just changed everything." In the days that followed, my world turned upside down. I learned that I was Grisha, a sun summoner, the first of my kind in centuries. The Darkling himself escorted me to Oz-Alta, the capital of Ravka, where I was to be presented to the king and begin my training. Oz-Alta was a city of wonder and opulence, so far removed from the humble life I had known. The grand palace glittered with gold and jewels, and everywhere I looked, I saw the beautiful and powerful Grisha in their colored keftas, blue for Ethiraki, red for Korporaki, and purple for Materiaki. And then there was the Darkling, in his black kefta, set apart from all the rest. I was overwhelmed by it all. The attention, the luxury, the expectations placed upon me. I was to be the savior of Ravka, the one who would destroy the Fold and reunite our divided nation. But how could I, a simple mapmaker, possibly live up to such a destiny? The Darkling became my teacher and confidant. He was patient with my lack of control over my powers. encouraging me when I faltered and pushing me to reach beyond what I thought possible. There was something magnetic about him, a pull I couldn't resist even as a part of me whispered caution. "You and I are unique, Alina," he told me one evening as we stood on a balcony overlooking the palace grounds. "We are the only two of our kind. Light and dark, two sides of the same coin. Together, we could reshape the world." His words thrilled and terrified me in equal measure. I found myself drawn to him, even as I missed Mal with an H that never quite subsided. Where was he now? Had he survived the attack in the fold? No one seemed to have answers for me, and as the days passed, I began to fear the worst. My training continued, and slowly, but surely, I began to gain control over my powers. The first time I successfully summoned light without the threat of imminent death. I felt a rush of exhilaration unlike anything I had ever experienced. The Darkling's approving smile made my heart race in a way I didn't quite understand. But even as I grew stronger, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The other Grisha, while polite, kept their distance. I caught whispers and sidelong glances, hints of secrets just beyond my reach. And always there was the Darkling, watching me with those inscrutable eyes. It was Genya, a tailor Grisha assigned to be my servant and confidant, who finally began to open my eyes to the truth. Beautiful and sharp-tongued, Genya became the closest thing I had to a friend in the little palace. "Be careful, Alina," she warned me one night as she brushed my hair. "The Darkling isn't what he seems. None of this is." I wanted to dismiss her words as jealousy or paranoia, but they planted a seed of doubt that I couldn't ignore. I began to pay closer attention to the whispered conversations that stopped when I entered a room, to the way the Darkling's hand would linger on my arm just a moment too long. And then, on the night of a grand feat to celebrate my progress, everything came crashing down. As I stood beside the Darkling, basking in the adoration of the court, a commotion erupted at the entrance to the ballroom. My heart nearly stopped as I saw a familiar face pushing through the crowd. Mal. He was alive, and he had come for me. But before I could react, the Darkling's guards seized him, dragging him away as he shouted my name. The Darkling's grip on my arm tightened, his voice low and dangerous in my ear. "You belong here, Alina. With me. Don't throw away everything we've worked for." In that moment, I saw the Darkling clearly for the first time. The mask of benevolence fell away, revealing the ruthless ambition beneath. I realized with a sickening clarity that I had been nothing more than a pawn in his grand design. I broke free from his grip and ran, my heart pounding in my ears. I had to find Mal, had to escape before it was too late. But the little palace was a maze, and every turn seemed to lead me back to where I started. Finally, I found myself in a small, dusty library. As I caught my breath, my eyes fell upon an ancient tome, its pages yellow with age. The title, written in faded Rakan script, made my blood run cold. The History of the Shadow Fold. With trembling hands, I opened the book, and the terrible truth unfolded before me. The fold had not been created by an evil Grisha centuries ago, as I had been told. It was the work of the Darkling himself, a catastrophic result of his quest for power, and now he planned to use me to expand it, to bring all of Ravka under his control. The sound of footsteps in the corridor spurred me into action. I tore the relevant pages from the book and stuffed them into my bodice, then slipped out of the library through a servant's entrance. My mind raced as I tried to formulate a plan. I had to find Mal, had to warn someone about the Darkling's true nature. But who would believe me? The Darkling had centuries of influence and power behind him. I was just a girl, a newly discovered Grisha with powers I barely understood. And yet, I knew I had to try. The fate of Ravka, perhaps of the entire world, depended on it. As I crept through the shadowy corridors of the little palace, I heard the sound of a struggle coming from a nearby room. Peering through a crack in the door, I saw Mal, battered, but defiant, facing off against two of the Darkling's personal guards. Without thinking, I burst into the room, summoning a blinding flash of light that momentarily stunned the guards. Mal and I seized the opportunity, running hand in hand through the twisting hallways of the palace. "Alina, what's going on?" Mal gasped as we ran. "Who are these people? What have they done to you?" "There's no time to explain," I panted. "We have to get out of here." "The Darkling. He's not what we thought." "None of this is." We made it as far as the palace gates before our luck ran out. A wall of shadows rose before us, solidifying into the imposing figure of the Darkling. His face was a mask of cold fury as he regarded us. "I'm disappointed in you, Alina," he said, his voice soft but laced with menace. "I offered you the world, and this is how you repay me. By running back to your little tracker boy." I stood my ground, summoning every ounce of courage I possessed. "I know the truth," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I know what you did, what you really are. And I won't help you destroy Ravka." For a moment, something like regret flickered in the Darkling's eyes. Then it was gone, replaced by a determination that chilled me to the bone. "You don't have a choice," he said. And with a wave of his hand, darkness engulfed us. When I came to, I found myself aboard a skiff, headed straight for the heart of the fold. Mal was beside me, unconscious and bound. The Darkling stood at the prow of the skiff, his black kefta billowing in the wind. "Welcome to your destiny, Alina," he said without turning. "Today, we remake the world." As we entered the fold, I felt the oppressive weight of the darkness, pressing in on all sides. The Volker screeched in the distance, held at bay only by the Darkling's power. I knew then what he intended, to use my light to carve a path through the shadow fold, expanding his dominion over all of Ravka. But I had a choice. As the Darkling raised his hands to channel my power, I made my decision. Instead of pushing back the darkness, I embraced it. I let the shadows flow into me, mingling with my light in a way that felt both wrong and exhilarating. The Darkling's eyes widened in shock as he realized what I was doing. "Stop," he commanded, but it was too late. Light and shadow exploded from within me, a maelstrom of power that tore through the fold. I heard the Darkling's scream of rage, saw Mal's eyes flutter, open in confusion, and then everything went white. When the dust settled, I found myself lying on the ground, the taste of ash in my mouth. The fold was gone, dissolved by the fusion of my light and the Darkling's shadow. But the victory was bittersweet. All around us lay the devastation wrought by our powers, a wasteland where the fold had once been. Mal helped me to my feet, his eyes full of questions I wasn't sure I could answer. In the distance, I saw the Darkling, his black kefta in tatters, staggering away from the scene of destruction. "This isn't over, Alina," he called back, his voice carrying on the wind. "We are bound together, you and I. Light and shadow, creation and destruction. You can't escape your destiny." As his words faded away, I turned to Mal, seeing the love and concern in his eyes. "What do we do now?" he asked softly. I looked out over the ruined landscape, feeling the weight of my newfound power and the responsibility that came with it. "We rebuild," I said, "and we prepare. Because the Darkling is right about one thing, this isn't over." In the months that followed, Ravka struggled to come to terms with the destruction of the Fold and the revelation of the Darkling's true nature. I worked tirelessly alongside Mal and a growing group of allies to help restore the land and protect the people from the Darkling's continued threats. We established a new order of Grisha, one dedicated to using our powers for the good of all, not just the elite. But even as we made progress, I couldn't shake the feeling that the Darkling was out there, watching and waiting for his moment to strike. And deep down, in a place I was afraid to examine too closely, I felt the pull of the darkness he had awakened in me. The fusion of light and shadow had changed me in ways I was only beginning to understand. I knew that one day I would have to face the Darkling again, and the outcome of that confrontation would determine not just my fate, but the fate of the entire world. As I stood on the balcony of the little palace, now our headquarters for the new Grisha order, I felt Mal's presence beside me. He took my hand, a gesture of support and love that grounded me in the present. "Whatever comes," he said softly, "we'll face it together." I squeezed his hand, drawing strength from his unwavering faith in me. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult, fraught with dangers, both external and internal. The Darkling's shadow still loomed large over Ravka, and the power within me was a constant reminder of the fine line between light and darkness. But as I looked out over the land I had sworn to protect, I felt a glimmer of hope. With Mal by my side and the support of our growing alliance, perhaps we could forge a new future for Ravka, one where Grisha and Akazatsya could live in harmony, where power was tempered by compassion. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. As darkness fell, I summoned a soft glow to my palm, a gentle reminder of the light that lived within me. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever battles we would have to fight, I was ready. For I was Alina Starkov's son, summoner and protector of Ravka, and my story was far from over.